Okay, shall we start? Yes. Good evening. Now today we'll be discussing about this is our class 3 of our, which one? It is class 3. This is our majorly, this is our the class 3. Now with respect to our the class 3, now first we will discuss about which things now? Now the first one we call it as what? This is about our the class 3. The class 3 of the geography, yes or no? Now under this class 3 of our geography, we will be discussing about, majorly today we will be discussing about our major one, we call it as our theme 3. Now what is our theme 3? Now theme 3 we call it as motions of earth. Now under our theme 3 we will be discussing about our motions. Now under this we will be discussing about the two important things. One we call it as what? One we call it as rotation, and the second one we call it as what? Revolution. This we'll be discussing today. And the second one we call it as after this we will be starting with respect to a chapter called as the chapter 2. Now sir, what is this chapter 2? Now chapter 2 talks about the origin and evolution of what? Evolution of earth bagi. Okay alva? Today we'll be discussing this part. Majorly our motions, rotation, revolution bagi. Now how day and night is created. And the second one, how seasons are created, how many seasons do we have with respect to our world level. We'll be discussing here. And the second one we call it as origin and evolution, we'll be discussing as a part of our earth. Yes or no? Now before starting with respect to our new chapter, the new one, we will discuss about our revision of what? Revision of our last class. Now with respect to revision of our last class, we have discussed about which all things? Now yesterday we have discussed about the theme called as, which theme? It is theme 2. Online, hope it is audible, visible? Yes. Okay, it is Nivedita, good evening. M. Ira, yes. Neetu, good evening. Yes. Okay, now coming with respect to this theme 2. It is theme 2. Yesterday we have discussed about the two things. One we call it as what? One we call it as the latitude, and the second one we call it as what? Second one we call it as longitude. Now when discussing about latitude and longitude, we have discussed about based on our blueprint. Now what is our blueprint here? Now blueprint here is, first one I have said it is introduction, and the second one we call it as what? The salient features, and the third one we call it as uniqueness. Now introduction of latitudes, it's an imaginary line which is plotted in what manner? Horizontal manner. In the same way, what is longitudes? It is the vertical manner. It is the vertical imaginary line which is plotted in what manner? The vertical manner, we call it as the longitudes. Okay, now first we have discussed this, and the second one with respect to our salient features. Now what is our salient features we have discussed with respect to the latitudes? Now the first one we call it as number. Now how many number? It is 181 in number, 90 plus 90 plus 1. Whereas here, how many number? It is, we call it as 360, maximum 360. Maximum 360. Sir, inge sir andre, it is 179 to the east, excluding 0, 179. And 179 to the west, and 0 plus 180. The same one. Total is the 360. Maximum is 360. And the second one, does the length remain same? The length of latitude remains same, Andre? No, it is different. Now, maximum at equator, minimum at where? Minimum at pole, or we call it as the 90 degrees. Yes or no? What about here? Don't you think length remains same? The length remains same. What about the distance? It is, distance is same. whereas here distances, it is different. And maximum at equator, it is minimum at poles. We have seen this, and followed by this, we have discussed about the most important one. The most important one, we call it as Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn. It is Arctic Circle, Antarctic Circle, the North Pole, and the last one we call it as what? South Pole. Whereas here the most important one we call it as 0 degree, we call it as prime meridian, and the second one we call it as 180 degrees, we call it as international dateline, and the last one we call it as what? The last one we call it as, it is Indian Standard Time, and that Indian Standard Time we call it as 82.5 anta karitivi, and that 82.5 we call it as, we have a single, it is Indian Standard Time, and that we call it as IST. Yes or no? But Northeast is demanding a separate, it is time zone. But as of now we have only one. As of now we have only one, but the demand is coming from where? Northeast. But the demand is coming from Northeast. We have discussed all the things, and we also discussed about what is the application of latitudes and what is the application of longitudes. I hope the revision with respect to our last class, it is 100% clear. Yes or no? Online first? Yes, yes. Yes, Ria, perfect. Yes. Good evening. These are the major one. Now, sir, if this is clear, now we need to start about which theme? We need to start about the first or the next theme. We call it as what? The theme 3. Now, if that is the case, give a heading called as theme 3. Now, give a heading called as which one? First, it is the theme 3. Now, the theme 3. Now, understand my concept here, or understand the concept, and later on, nana baristini. Okay, alva? It is nana baristini. Okay. Now, first one is the conceptual clarity. Now, first one, my question here is Earth static or is it rotating and revolving? In answer. Now, is it rotating or revolving? It is both. But my first question here is, Earth is not stagnant, alva? Yes or no? Is Earth stagnant or static? Is Earth static or not? First one is Patanjali. Yes or no? No. Now Earth is not static. Now if it is not static, nothing but Earth is continuously moving. Yes or no? Now sir, Earth is moving, and the movement of Earth we call it as what? The movement of Earth we call it as what? The motion or the motions. It is Earth is continuously moving. Now sir, if the Earth is continuously moving, how it is moving? Is it moving west east, or is it in it is episode manner, or is it rotating or revolving? Nothing that. Nothing that. It is like an example of me. Am I static? Can be static, as well as can be motion also. Now note out, or the second stay in the same place. But if that is the case, is Earth is not static, this is first one. Second one, now if Earth is moving andre, is it moving in a predetermined manner or else in a episode manner? Hing move ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ. ಈಗ ನೋಡಿ ನಾನು, I can move to the front and I can move to the back. But can the Earth do in the same manner? It is no. Earth is moving, no doubt. But Earth is moving in a what manner? It is the predetermined or pre-decided manner move ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ. It is moving in what manner? The pre-decided manner. Sir, now what is that pre-decided manner? Now there are two important pre-decided manner. One we call it as what? One we call it as rotation. And the second one we call it as what? Second one we call it as revolution. It is revolution under Kranti Allah. It is revolution is nothing but it is moving around the apparent star. Yes or no? The first one, understand how? First one, understand, sir, what is rotation? Now can I say, this is our axis. Now around the axis, this is our Earth. This is, be cautious here, this is our axis. This is our axis. Now this one we call it as what? Equator. This we call it as Nanin Bardilla. How can you say that it's Tropic of Cancer? But not out. It is Tropic of Cancer. And the next one we call it as what? It is the Arctic Circle, the Tropic of the Capricorn, the Antarctic Circle, we call it as 90. Okay, Alva? Yes or no? I hope this it is clear at least. This is equator, the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn, the Arctic Circle, this we call it as the Antarctic Circle, the North Pole, and this we call it as what? South Pole. This is our first one. Now, if it is moving around if it is moving around an axis, we call it as what? It is rotation of the earth. The first one we call it as now predetermined. Now predetermined andre, does it move from east to west or from west to east? Now is it predetermined? Fix ಆಗಿದೆಯಾ? Yes. The motion or the rotation is fixed. It should move from what manner? It is adikoskara west to east. Yes or no? It is predetermined and it moves from west to east. It moves from west to east. This is our first one. And the second major important one, here is, sir, this axis is fine. But axis is fine. Now, what is the application of studying this rotation? Why we need to study this? That is, anyways, it is predetermined and it is moving continuously. Then why I need to study this part? What is the application? Now, what is the application of studying about this? Why should I need to study? Now, my simple question here is, it is moving on continuous basis. And second one, a pre-decided, but nothing in my hand. But if nothing in my hand, why should I need to study? What is the application of this? Online fast. Example keltare. It is application here is now the region which is exposed directly to the sun. Now always and always, now where can we see the sun for the first time? It is eastern region. Now if a sun is exactly facing it is the star, this region is facing a star or a sun. Now don't you think this region will be having what? This region will be having, we call it as day. This region will be having day. Now if it is day, don't you think it will be having what? Night. Now after some time, don't you think this region will start to move towards west or move towards east? This night becomes, it is day, and day becomes what? Yes or no? Now my first question here is, sir, what is the application andre? What is the application here? What application no? Now day and night is created by motions or movement of earth. Now is it movement around its axis or movement around the star? Around the axis. Now the rotation leads to creation of what? The rotation. This is the most expected question. This leads to creation of the day and night. Now how day and night is created? One is because of movement. Movement agile andidre. Think that if there is no movement, if there is no movement with respect to it is earth. Now what would have been happened? What would have happened? It is the region which is exposed to the sun would have experienced complete what? The complete 24 hours day. Complete day. Whereas this 24 hours would have been what? It is night. Now, don't you think there is an extreme possibility, or there is an extreme? It has experience of day and night. 24 hours complete. It has the sunrise, and dark leads to what? Temperature, higher temperature. Whereas opposite kade enagtittu would have been complete coldness. Now, if there is complete coldness and complete hotness, don't you think this we call it as extremeness of temperature? Now, extreme temperature idre, don't you think water exists in solid form and water exists in gaseous form? If that is the case, can we call that season as, or that region as Goldilocks zone? No. Goldilocks zone illa antandre there was no possibility of life at all. Hope you're getting my question. The first one, it has continuous, it has exposure to the sun. This region would have been complete 24 into 365 days, would have been complete day. Now, complete day jotege, it is high sun rays, the vertical sun rays, temperature higher, here temperature cold. Ili tumba chali, ili tumba shake. Now, tumba chali, tumba shake adre, don't you think there be extremeness of the, it is climatic conditions? Now, if there is extreme climatic conditions idre, can there be existence of life? But what is the second application? Second application here is, don't you think because of the movement of the earth on its axis, it is creating what? The favorable climatic conditions for the existence of what? Life. Now, in a simpler manner, can I say it's a Goldilocks zone? It is creating a Goldilocks zone. What is Goldilocks zone? Water exists in what manner? It is water, andre neeru. It is existing in yav form alli sir antandre liquid form alli ide. Now, what is liquid andre Goldilocks zone? Nothing but the second application we call it as the creation of, we call it as the Goldilocks zone anta karitivi. We call it as the Goldilocks zone. Yes, exactly. Yes, online. Perfect. Yes, Danitu, Ria. Yes. Okay. Okay, this is our first one. My second question, or the third question here is, now, are we experiencing, are we experiencing exactly 12 hours day and exactly 12 hours night in our Bangalore, or it is Delhi, or in Mumbai, or in Nagpur, or in West Bengal? Now, are we experiencing exact 24 hours only, the 12 hours day and 12 hours at us night? Why? No. So, at least say, are we experiencing exactly 12, it is hours day and 12 hours night? Yes or no? Sir, sir, exactly 12 hours illa antandre, because our earth is not in a straight manner. Rather, our earth in what manner? It is tilted manner. Onsala bend agudide. Nothing but it is in what tilted, sir antandre? It has been tilted. In what manner? It has been tilted by how many degrees? It is tilted by 23.5 degrees towards what? It is east. Now, because of the tilt towards the east, we are experiencing what? We are experiencing enappa. It is the third one, we call it as unequal. Unequal day and night was. Yes or no? It is unequal day and night. Unequal day and night, we call it as solar day anta karitivi. Unequal day and night, we call it as what? We call it as the solar day. Yes or no, boss? This we call it as the first one under our motions. The first one we call it as rotation andrenu, and the second we have discussed about what is the application of rotation we have discussed. Okay na? Idin barkondu ononagi, and after this we'll go to our second motion called as revolution of our earth. Yes or no? 100% understood? Okay. If that is the case, first one give heading called as the motions. The first one, under motions, give a heading called as definition. Now what is the definition of motion andre? What is motion? It is movement. It is, the motion is defined as the movement of earth. Movement of earth ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ. Bracket, earth is not a static object. Earth is not a static object. Rather, earth is what? It's a dynamic object, boss. Rather, earth is what? A dynamic object. Okay, na? Yes or no? Okay. Now, motions are classified into what? Motions are, the next point, the motions are classified into two things. Are classified it into two things. One we call it as what? One we call it as rotation. One is rotation, and the second one we call it as what? It is revolution. Rotation, and the second one we call it as what? Revolution. Okay, now first one, it is the first one, one or capital A anta. The first one we call it as the rotation. Now what is the definition of rotation? Big name. It is, if the earth is moving on its own axis, if the earth is moving on its own axis, ಏನಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ? On its own axis, we call it as rotation. Second, now what is the time taken by the earth to rotate the one rotation? It is 24 hours. It is the time taken up by the, it is Katha Parivarದಲ್ಲಿ, time taken by sun or the earth is equal to ashta. The time taken up by the earth is equal to ಎಷ್ಟು ಗಂಟೆ? It is 24 hours. 24 hours, and this 24 hours we call it as what? It is solar day anta. We call it as solar day. This is our first one. Is it clear now? ಈ diagram add ಮಾಡಿ. But within 30 seconds. First, straight or tilted, it's up to you. The circle, the oblate spheroid, axis. Second one, the west to east. Okay alva? The west to east in Mickey anyways ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ. Okay alva? The next one, the applications of the rotation. Now what is the application of rotation? देखिए, what is the application? First application, it leads to creation of what? Day and night. The first application we call it as online. Exactly, yes. Riya, Nivedita, exactly, yes, perfect, yes, exactly. Approximately it is 24 hours. It is 23 hours and 56 minutes ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ, but not required. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಬೇಕಿದ್ರೆ ಬರ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. It is 23 hours and 56 minutes, but exam ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಳಲ್ಲ, but maximum approximate range is 24 hours, and that we call it a solar day. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? Yes, exactly, yes, perfect, yes, okay. And the second application we call it as what? Second application, it leads to creation of what? Goldilocks zone. Now why Goldilocks zone? Because extremeness of temperature is reduced. Bracket ali, extremeness of temperature is reduced. Yes or no? The single region is not exactly exposed 24 hours. Second, what is the third application? What is the third application? The third application we call it as, it creates unequal day and night. It creates unequal day and night. ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ಕೋತೀರ ತಾನೆ? ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಪಕ್ಕ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ? ಎಸ್, ನಾನು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು ಬರ್ಸೋದು ಇಲ್ಲ. Yes or no? Those are majorly we call it as the exactly. The day and night occurs, rotation, exactly, yes. Okay, alva? Exactly. Exactly, only exactly, yes, perfect. Okay, alva? These are major, the first one, we call it as rotation. Okay, now? Yes or no? No doubts? Okay. The next one, what is the next one? It is the next one, we call it as, it is, the second one, we call it as revolution. Yes, okay now. The second one we call it a revolution. Again, I'll be following the same blueprint. Now, what is revolution? First one, what is the definition here? What is the definition here? It is movement of Earth. It is movement of Earth around the parent star. Now, which is the parent star we have in our solar system, boss? Now, which is the only star we have in our solar system? It is Sun. Only. I'm using a term called as the only star ನಮ್ಮ solar system ಇರತಕ್ಕಂತದ್ದು ಯಾವುದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ it is Sun. Now, if my Earth, if it is rotating, understand my question here. This is Sun. This is Sun. Now, the rotation of Earth, around the parent star, we call it as what? We call it as revolution. Understand here, it is definition here is, it is movement of, we call it as Earth around the parent star, we call it as Sun, because we have only one star, we call it as, we have only one star, we call it as any though, we call it as Sun. If the Earth, if it is revolving around the parent star, we call it as what? Revolution. Now my second question here is, now sir, how is it revolving? Is it revolving from west to east, or it is the east to west? It is in what? Is it moving in clockwise direction or in anti-clockwise direction? Pakka? Okay alva? The second major important one, ಬರ್ಕೋಬಾರ್ದು ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ನಾನು ಬರೆಸ್ತೀನಿ. ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂಡ್ ಆನ್ಸರ್ಸ್ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅಷ್ಟೇ. It is second one we call it as, sir, ಹೆಂಗ್ ಸರ್ ಮೂವ್ ಆಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, it moves in this manner. Now is it clockwise or anti-clockwise? This one. Basic questions, but majority does not know this. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಮಗಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ. It is the second question we call it as what? Anti-clockwise. Anti-clockwise and rotational we have already discussed. It is Earth moves from west to east. This done, boss? Second one done. Now sir, is the Earth revolving around the parent star called as Sun in what manner? Is it in circular manner or else in elliptical manner? Now what is elliptical now? Is elliptical, sir. Now what is circular and what is elliptical? Now circular andre that distance from center is what? The same. Circular, it is nothing but it is from the center. From the center, that distance remain what? Same. If it is 5 kilometers, 5 illu kuda 5, illu kuda 5. And this we call it as what? Circular. Now sir, now be cautious here. Now the circular movement, does it exist in nature andre? No. It is impossibility to exist in nature. It is impossibility to exist in nature. Yenike sir impossibility andre? Now to maintain the same distance, it requires more amount of energy for the movement. Same distance. ಈಗ ನೋಡಿ, but if I am moving in the same direction, but I take more energy than required. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ the circular one does not exist in nature. Does not exist in nature. Okay now. Now sir, if it is not existing in nature, ಮತ್ತೆ ಹಿಂಗ್ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಏನ್ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ನಾವು ಏನ್ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, it is, we call it as elliptical manner. Now what is elliptical? It is uneven distance from where? The center. Now sir, what is that uneven one? Nothing that anyone exists either. Now there is think that this is my center. Now sir, what is that uneven? Illina nodi. That distance can be 10 kilometers, whereas illina distance can be 20 kilometers. The uneven distance from the center, we call it as what? Elliptical one. Now this elliptical one exists naturally in, it is nature. Yes. Now be cautious here. This is most important from your, it is space technology. Because in our space technology we have a concept called as orbits. We have a concept called as orbits. Now which orbit requires higher energy? Orbit. It is orbit ಯಾವುದು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಬೇಕು ಸರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ circular. Because it is in the continuous agi. If I am launching any, think that if I am launching any satellites into this orbit, but I need to have more energy because I need to continuously rotate in this manner. It requires more energy. Whereas if it is moving in irregular manner, does it require more energy? Adukoskara this elliptical one exists in where? This elliptical one exists in where? Exists in nature. This one exists in the nature anta karitivi. Exists in nature. Yes or no? Now understand here. Now is it circular or is it elliptical one? It is elliptical. Baribodalli. It is anti-clockwise. And the next one we call it as what? It is elliptical. Elliptical andre irregular distance or unequal distance from the center. Unequal distance from the center anta karitivi. Sir, idella okay sir. Now unequal andre, now where can you observe the shortest distance? Now where can you observe the larger distance? Now ಈ larger distance ಅನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ and longer distance ಅನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? Fastest, online fast, begin. Yes. Sheelam, good evening. Yes. Okay. Exactly, yes. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಪ್ಪ? It is the largest distance between the sun and what? The earth. The sun and the earth. The sun and the earth anna, the larger distance idre, we call it as ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? Aphelion. Be cautious if it is a larger distance. Aphelion. Now sir, when can we observe the aphelion? ಯಾವಾಗ observe ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ aphelion? Now aphelion can be observed during July 4th. Example ಕೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. It is the adjust distance between sun and earth andre, we call it as aphelion, and that we call it as July 4th. Every year we'll be observing, or I can say the earth and the sun will be at the farther distance. Farther is nothing but the larger. Yes or no? Now the next one, now when can we observe the smaller distance between, we call it as earth and the sun. Now okay, but chikmakli question, the smallest question. Now which is the mission which has been launched to study about, it is the sun? It is Aditya L1. What is L1? It is Lagrange point 1 anta. The Lagrange point 1. Now it has been launched at how many kilometers? We'll see all those things. But adin study ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ we need to know the basics. Yes or no? Now is the Aditya L1 mission, is it a wasteful mission or is it a successful mission ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ? But when you know the basics. So I'm not saying geography ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. See, be it any subject or be it anything, if you are reading something, you need to know the core part. Now if I ask a question saying that what is this Lagrange? Okay, Lagrange fine. But who is this Lagrange? And why are we calling this as Lagrange? We could have called it some by name, by some name. Lagrange or Pongrange anta. Why Lagrange? Because it has been named after it is a person called as Joseph Lagrange who identified this Lagrange points. Now we have how many Lagrange points? Not the basics. Govinda? Yes or no? Yes, we'll see all the things, but basics bekaveko. See, sir, why are you connecting antandre? It is not to show my knowledge. It is rather to show that it is all this becomes important not from your geography, from your science and tech part also. Yes or no? Now, sir, if it is farthest is during July the 4th, July the 4th, exactly, yes. Now, the second one we call it as, now what is the, it is, or what is the point between the sun and the earth if it is nearest? Nearest the perihelion. The nearest one we call it as, the nearest one we call it as the perihelion. Now, when can we observe perihelion? It is when can we observe perihelion, sir, antandre? Yavaga? It is January 3rd. Yes, those are the first one. Now, my second question here is, sir, what is the average distance between? What is the average distance between the sun and the earth? What is the distance between the sun and the earth? Online first. Now 64 in 64,000 kilometers. Now the distance between 149 approximate ಆಗಿ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ 150 million kilometers. Okay na? Yes, it's not 16,000. Rather we call it as what? Rather we call it as approximate ಆಗಿ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು million kilometers sir ಅಂದ್ರೆ it is 150 million kilometers. What is 1 million? 10 lakhs. Now think about 150 into 10 lakh. ಅಷ್ಟು ದೂರ ಇದೆ. But this is average. Now if it is farther idaga, what is the distance? 152 million kilometers. Now farther idaga, the how many kilometers? 152 million. Smaller idaga, in and around 148 million kilometers. But average is what? 150. Okay na? Sir, ishtu dura iddaga ನಮ್ಮ ಆದಿತ್ಯ L1 ನ ಎಷ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ಲಾಂಚ್ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ ಗೊತ್ತಾ? We have launched at the distance of what? We have launched at the distance of ತುಕಾಲಿ ನೋಡಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಅಂತ? It is 1.5. It is ಎಷ್ಟು? It is lakh kilometers. Now is this Aditya L1 useful? Where is 150? Where is 1.5 lakh? Not even 1 million, boss. Not even 1%. Now, do we or can we call Aditya L1 as the most prestigious mission? But US has taken an initiative to land on the sun itself. It is closest. And that mission we call it as Parker Solar Probe. That is now Iledivi. But US is planning to launch, or already they have launched a mission. We call it as Parker Solar Probe near to the sun. And that is about Aditya, and that is about majorly we call it as the Parker Solar Probe anta karithivi. Yes, on exactly, Sheila, exactly perfect. Yes, the Sunita, Riya, Nivedita, Ira, exactly, yes. Okay, that's about majorly we call it as the news, as well as we call it as major again. It is the basics about we call it as. I'm just introducing about the basics. Now, sir, idella okay, sir, idella okay. But what is the advantage? What is the application of studying about this? What is the application? Ignore. Now, what is the application? It is application to study about, we call it as the revolution. Why we need to study, boss? It is ಏನಕ್ಕೆ? It is first one we call it as. Now understand my question here. Now this is about our sun. ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಇಮೇಜ್ ತೋರಿಸಿನ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್. ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಇಮೇಜ್. This is sun, and I said this is ಏನು? This is elliptical orbit. Now, should I need to write the earth in a straight manner or tilted towards the east or tilted to the west? Tilted towards in ಬರಿಬೇಕು. It is this one. Yes or no? Now, this tilted one, this we call it as our equator. Now, if it is sun rays, where will we get the sun rays? Is it majorly towards the northern hemisphere or towards the other hemisphere? Northern. And ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬರಿಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ, now how should I need to write? Straight or left or right? It is right, ಅಲ್ಲ boss? Right side towards the east. ಹೌದಾ ಇಲ್ವೋ? Now east again, this is about our equator. Now where will we get? It is the sun rays. Southern hemisphere. Okay now. Southern hemisphere. Now, if a sun ray is exerting on the northern hemisphere, don't you think northern hemisphere will be having summer? Barila. ನೀವೇನು ಹೇಳ್ತದ ಬರೀತೀನಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. But even wrong also it's okay, doesn't matter. But ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿ. But ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಏನು ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಪಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು. It is the next one. Can I say northern hemisphere as summer? If northern hemisphere summer idre, now ಇಲ್ಲಿ there is an absence of sunlight. Now that we call it as what? Winter. Yes or no? This we call it as winter. I hope you are getting it, not mugging up. First one done. Now what about here? South ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ? Winter. Okay, perfect. It is the summer ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. The summer. What about northern? It is winter. Okay now. Winter and it is summer region. Yes. Now sir, now normally we name our seasons based on northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere. It is naming of seasons happens majorly based on northern hemisphere. Why northern hemisphere, sir? Why northern hemisphere? It is because land in we call it as land to water. This is land is to water in the ratio of what? The 2:3. Whereas in southern hemisphere, the land to water it is the land to water is land is to water it is 1:4. Now where can you see maximum land? Northern hemisphere. Now maximum land andre maximum population is present in which one? It is which hemisphere? Northern. Whereas maximum water is present in which hemisphere? Southern. Now ಈಗ ನಾನು ನೇಮಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ ಒಂದು ಝೋನ್ ಮೇಲೆ ನೇಮಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ? Why northern hemisphere? Because more land, more population. For the convenience of population, we will name based on ಯಾವ್ದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ? Northern hemisphere ಮೇಲೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಸರ್ this one which season ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ we call this zone as what? It is summer solstice. This zone as what? This zone as what? This zone as be cautious. This complete season ಯಾವುದು sir ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ this complete season we call it as which one? The summer solstice. summer solstice. Ade alli. It is, we name it based on our northern hemisphere. Now this season we call it as what? This season we call it as the winter solstice. Clear? Yes or no? Now first one, understand. It is, I am the sun. The first one, it is, yav kade ide? It is towards my east. Now east adaga northern part is exposed towards the sun. But ಈಗ ನೋಡಿ, hope you're getting it. It's moving. But same manner. Yes or no? Yes. This we call it as rotation. Now the rotation is happening in what manner? Anti-clockwise direction. Now sir, now during normally the June-July month will be experiencing what? The summer solstice. Nodi, normally it is, nam India comes under where? Northern hemisphere. But June-July alli tumba bisli irutte, kadme bisli irutte. It is high intensity of what? That temperature. High intensity of temperature. But when will the temperature be highest, sir? Antandre, it is June 21st, so or the July 21st. It is highest amount of, we call it as temperature. Why? Because India is present in where? Nothing. But if it is Australia, when will Australia experience summer? It is yake. But Australia comes from southern hemisphere or northern hemisphere? Southern. But southern ge, when will be summer? It is during the month of December. No, not just understand all those things. It is in the month of what? In the month of December. That is normally the month of the June-July. Month of June-July. And the next one we call it as, it is in the Garitivi. The next one we call it as, it is during the month of what? It is December, January, February, March. April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Yes or no? Okay, ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ ಈಗ? ನಾವು ಸರ್ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಓಕೆ ಸರ್, ಬಟ್ ಈ ಒಂದು ಸೆಪ್ಟೆಂಬರ್ ಮತ್ತು ಮಾರ್ಚ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗತ್ತೆ? ನಾವ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿ, ನಾವು ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಅನ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಂಡ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ನಾವ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ತಿದ್ದಂಗೆ, ಡೋಂಟ್ ಯು ಥಿಂಕ್ ಬೋತ್ ದ ನಾರ್ದರ್ನ್ ಹೆಮಿಸ್ಫಿಯರ್ ಆಸ್ ವೆಲ್ ಆಸ್ ಸದರ್ನ್ ಹೆಮಿಸ್ಫಿಯರ್ ವಿಲ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ದ ಸನ್ಲೈಟ್? Yes or no? The same thing happens with respect to the back also. But ಅದನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈಕ್ವಿನಾಕ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. We call it as ಎಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? Equinox. It is, we call it as equinox. Now sir, equinox ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಸರ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಏನಪ್ಪ equinox? What is equinox? It is equal distribution of sunlight both in the northern hemisphere as well as in southern hemisphere. Northern hemisphere as well as southern hemisphere. ಇಲ್ಲೂ equinox ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಇಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ? Equinox. Yes, but problem ಏನು ಸರ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು equinox ಅಲ್ಲಿ southern hemisphere ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ? ಸ್ಪ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ನಾರ್ದರ್ನ್ ಸ್ಪ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಆಟಮ್ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಪ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಆಟಮ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? ಸ್ಪ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸ್ಪ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಸರ್? ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಆಟಮ್? ಆಟಮ್ ಸೀಸನ್. ನಾವು ಸ್ಪ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? ಎಲೆ ಉದುರ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಚಿಗುರ್ತಿರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಅದನ್ನ we call it what? It is the growing up of the leaves, we call it as the spring. Now when can we see the spring or the growing up of the, it is the leaves in southern hemisphere? ಯಾವ ಮಂತ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ? ಸೆಪ್ಟೆಂಬರ್. ಬಟ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಇಂಡಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಯಾಟಿಸ್ಫೈಡ್? ಎಸ್ ಸರ್, ಇಷ್ಟು ಸ್ಯಾಟಿಸ್ಫೈ ಆದ್ರೆ ಮೆಜಾರಿಟಿ 90% ಡನ್, ಬಟ್ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು 10% ಇದೆ. ಬಟ್ ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲಿಕೇಟೆಡ್. ನಾವು ಸರ್, ಮೈ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲಿಕೇಟೆಡ್ ಒನ್ ಇಯರ್ ಇಸ್, ಇವಾಗ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲಿಕೇಟೆಡ್ ಒನ್ ನೋಡೋಣ. The next one is complicated, but this majority. That majority is clear now. ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಬಟ್ ಸರ್ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲಿಕೇಟೆಡ್ ಏನು ಸರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು ಕಾಂಪ್ಲಿಕೇಟೆಡ್ ಏನು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, this is our sun, and the second one we call it as, this is our what? ಬೇಗ ನನ್ನ ಜೊತೆ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕು. It is elliptical orbit. Now elliptical orbit, this is that tilted towards east, the northern hemisphere. Now the sun rays falls exactly on which latitude? Is it equator ಮೇಲೆ ಬೀಳ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ ಅಥವಾ ಟ್ರಾಪಿಕ್ ಆಫ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ಸರ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಬೀಳ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ? Tropic of Cancer. Understand this. This is highly important for studying about monsoon also. ಇದನ್ನ ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಮತ್ತೆ I will take up all those topics while discussing about the monsoon, because initial some 15 classes will be on basics ಅಲ್ವಾ, ಎಲ್ಲ basics ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ I'll be starting applying all those concepts. Now sir, my question here is, now this vertical rays, is it falling on 0 degree or at the, it is 23.5. 23.5. Now example ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, now in the northern hemisphere, where can you experience or when can you experience the direct falling of what? The sun rays. Now at which latitude? It is 23.5, and that 23.5 we call it as what? We call it as Tropic of Cancer. Okay now. Second one, during month of yadu? December. Now during the month of December, now it is, where will this sun rays fall? Is it at the equator, exactly vertical rays, or at 23.5 south? It is 23.5 south ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ ನೋಡಿ. And this 23.5 south ಅನ್ನು ಏನಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ? We call it as Tropic of Cancer, sorry, Tropic of Capricorn. Tropic of Capricorn. Satisfied? Now sir, ಇದು okay sir, but where will I get exact vertical rays falling at the equator? It is ಎಲ್ಲಿ sir ಅಂದ್ರೆ, in the month of September, in the month of March. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಅಲ್ವಾ ಈಕ್ವಿನಾಕ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರೆಯೋದು. ಈಕ್ವಿನಾಕ್ಸ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? It is a sun rays which is exactly falling at where? 0. And ಅದನ್ನ we call it what? Equinox ಅಂದ್ರೆ, it is equator which is dividing it into 2 equal halves. ಹೌದೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ? It is ಇಲ್ಲಿ. It is, we call it as here. It is the sun rays will be on. The sun rays will be on ಇಲ್ಲಿ, and ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ. It is ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ. The sun rays will be on where? The sun rays will be on where? The sun rays will be majorly at where? It is majorly at, we call it as majorly at equator. Majorly at equator ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ. Majorly at, we call it as equator. Yes or no? ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ we call it as equinox. Okay now. Now sir, if that is the case, now where will I experience 6 months night and 6 months a day? Try, think, take some 10 seconds. And ಇವಾಗ where will I experience 6 ತಿಂಗಳು night ಇರಬೇಕು, 6 months night and 6 months day? Where? Poles. Now ಯಾವಾಗ sir? Now observe this. Now if you observe this, now I'll take some different color. ಯಾವ color? Green. Okay. I hope this looks good. Okay. Now sir, don't you think, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿ, again ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬನ್ನಿ, again south, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬನ್ನಿ, south, again ಇಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಬರೋವರೆಗೂ ಏನಾಗತ್ತೆ? It is up till here, up till from the month of June, July, August, September, October, November, December. ಎಷ್ಟು months ಆಯ್ತು? 6 months. South pole ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ? It is night ಇರುತ್ತೆ, day ಇರುತ್ತಾ? It is night. Why night? Because there is an absence of sunlight up till when? Up till June in the. Yes or no boss? Yes. Example ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, when will southern pole experiences day? December till June. But night kelidre? Yes or no? This is southern pole. We call it as night. But ignore South pole. The South pole, it is up till here. Nothing but December, January, February, March, April, May, June varegu. Now what will happen? It is South pole enagutte. South pole will be day. Now South pole day adre North pole enagutte. Night. Whereas illi night adre idenagutte. Okay na boss. This is 10% also done. This is about seasons. This is about the seasons. Okay na. Idu one bariyana. Yes or no? Artha aitam. Ee image torsla. Yes. Now we will try. Now with our basics, can we solve all the types? We will see one by one. Okay. This has been again taken up directly from NCERT, the 6th standard NCERT. But this image is most important and adikoskara ashte. Try now. The first one, where is sun? Center. And the second one, earth is revolving around the sun. Is it in circular manner or in elliptical manner? Elliptical manner. Now elliptical is nothing but unequal dimensions or unequal distance. Now yavaga sir, when can we have the farthest distance andre? It is July 4th. And we call it as aphelion. And when can we see the shortest distance? In the month of January, it is 3rd. We call it as what? The perihelion. Satisfied? And the second one or the next one we call it as when can we experience? It is exactly the falling up of vertical rays on the Tropic of Cancer. It is Tropic of Cancer. Yavaga sir antandre. It is we call it as June 21st. Now June 21st, the northern part we call it as summer and southern part the winter. Now exactly opposite happens here. Exactly opposite yavaga sir andre. It is 22nd December. Now 22nd December, the rays are falling on the Tropic of Capricorn. Now Tropic of Capricorn andre, the southern one will experience summer, northern one will experience what? Winter. Now I have already said naming happens majorly based on what? Majorly based on northern hemisphere, because yenike sir antandre, it is because of land to water the ratio is highest, whereas southern hemisphere it has land to water as 1:4. It is land is more, population is also more, and adikoskara we name it based on the northern hemisphere. Idine enta kariತೀವಿ winter solstice, and ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ we call it as what? The summer solstice. Whereas with respect to March as well as September, we have a equal or the vertical rays exactly falling on the equator. Now if it is exactly falling on the equator, we will be experiencing two things. One we call it as a spring season, and the second one we call it as what? It is autumn season. Now already in spring and rain, it is the leaves will start to grow after shedding up of the leaves. Now why shedding happens? See, all these are, you should know, it's not about changes, it's about an adaptation to conserve the moisture content. Notiga? Now sir, my major question here is, now in northern hemisphere it was summer. ನಾವು ಸಮ್ಮರ್ ಇದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಏನಾಗ್ಬೇಕಿಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಉದ್ರಬೇಕಲ್ವಾ ಸಮ್ಮರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಆಟೋಮನ್ whereas till it is winter. Now after temperature rise ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ರೆ the leaves will start to grow. Yes or no? ಅಬ್ಸರ್ವ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಬೇಕಿದ್ರೆ. ಬಟ್ ಸೇಮ್ ಆಟೋಮನ್ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ನಾವು we are moving towards cold. ನಾವು ಕೋಲ್ಡ್ ಇಂದ ಟೆಂಪರೇಚರ್ ರೈಸ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ಸ್ಪ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. Because in extreme temperature, the leaves cannot grow. Because it is moving towards winter alva. It is shedding of leaves. Whereas ಹೋಗ್ತಾ spring ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. The leaves will start to grow. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿ. Now here it was winter. Now winter temperature rise ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? Grow ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. Again summer ಇಂದ winter ಕಡೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಿದ್ರೆ shed ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. Autumn. Again the winter, again autumn or the spring, the same. Yes or no boss? 100% clear ಆಯ್ತಾ? ನಾವು ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್ವೇಸ್ ಓಪನ್ ಸರ್ ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸತಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ. Yes, if no doubt we'll go for a content. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? Second one, dividing called as ಯಾವುದು? It is the revolution. Okay. Now the second one we call it as revolution. What is revolution? If the earth is revolving, on what manner? It is revolving around the parent star. Around the parent star we call it as what? It is sun. Around the parent star we call it as sun. Around the parent star we call it as the sun. Around the parent star we call it as sun. Now the revolution takes place in what manner? Is it in clockwise or in anti-clockwise manner? It is anti-clockwise manner, ಅಂದ್ರೆ opposite to clockwise. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? ನಮ್ಮ ಗಡಿಯಾರ ಹೋಗೋದನ್ನ ಕ್ಲಾಕ್ವೈಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ, ಆಪೋಸಿಟ್ ಹೋಗೋದನ್ನ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಆಂಟಿ ಕ್ಲಾಕ್ವೈಸ್ ಅಂತ. ಆಂಟಿ ಕ್ಲಾಕ್ವೈಸ್ ಆಂಟಿ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಆಂಟಿ. ಓಕೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ANTI. ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಆಂಟಿ ಕ್ಲಾಕ್ ವೈಸ್. ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಆಂಟಿ ಕ್ಲಾಕ್ ವೈಸ್. ಓಕೆನಾ? ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್, ನೌ ಇಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಸರ್ಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಆರ್ ಎಲಿಪ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ಮ್ಯಾನರ್? ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ elliptical manner. It rotates it revolves around the sun in what manner? It is in elliptical manner. Okay na? Yes or no boss? Okay. Idu basic definition ಆಯ್ತು. Now I am following same blueprint ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ಸೇಮ್ rotation ಏನು ಮಾಡೋದು revolution ಸೇಮ್. Now ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಓಕೆ ಸರ್, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಓಕೆ, ಬಟ್ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಅಪ್ಲಿಕೇಶನ್ಸ್? ಓಕೆ ಅದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೇಳಿ. It is nothing but it is revolution around the sun. We call it as what? It is what is the application, sir? Andre, what is the application? What is the application of revolution? What is the application of revolution? Tell the application. First. Big name. Now first one revolution is equal to one revolution is equal to 1 year ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಒಂದು ವರ್ಷ ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ it is earth revolving around the sun. We call it as what? Year. Now what is the time taken to cover? It is one revolution. ಎಷ್ಟು ದಿನ ತಗೊಳುತ್ತೆ? It is 365 days. Be cautious here. It is the 365 days plus ಏನು? It is 6 hours. 6 ಗಂಟೆ extra 6 hours. One revolution around the it is sun. It takes ನೋಡಿ, It takes 365 days. Yes or no? It is. Now by knowing about the earth, you should learn about being consistent. Now consistency henge sir antandre, the earth won't even change the cycle. That is the commitment. And the second one, exactly 365 6 hours exactly ashte. But are you consistent? ನೀವು ಒಂದಿನ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ, ಒಂದಿನ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಬರ್ತೀರಾ ಬರಲ್ಲ, ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದಿನ ಜಾಗ್ರಫಿ ಓದ್ತೀರಾ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಓದಲ್ಲ. Yes or no? It is, if earth is doing so much of things, why are we not able to do it? It is earth does not have life, if you are aware. Earth ಗೆ ಭೂಮಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಾಣ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಜೀವ ಇಲ್ಲ, but it is committed. But think about this human being which has life. Don't you think we need to be committed? We need to be dedicated, and we need to, it is being committed towards a particular cause. Yes or no? It is 365 ದಿನ ಕೂಡ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಮೂವ್ ಆಗ್ತಿರುತ್ತೆ. Yes or no? It is 365 days, 365 ದಿನ ಪ್ಲಸ್ 6 ಗಂಟೆ ತಗೊಳುತ್ತೆ. ಸರ್, ನಾವು ನಾರ್ಮಲ್ ಆಗಿ 6 ಗಂಟೆ ಕ್ಯಾಲ್ಕುಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ವಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ನೆನಪಿದ್ರೆ the 6 hours is added. It is once in how many years? Once in 4 years. Now we will consider it as what? Leap year. Now normal year we call it as 365 days 6 hours. Second year 365 days 365. This total 6 hours is being added for a particular day. That is 24 hours aitu. And the leap year we call it as 1 year in, 1 year extra. This we call it as what? Hope you're getting it. It is normal year ಏನು sir ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, normal year we call it as, it takes 365 days plus 6 hours. Now we can't say 365 plus 6 hours ಅಲ್ವಾ, ಒಂದು ಕಾಲ್ ದಿನ ಅಂತ. But for that it is 6 hours. Once in 4 years we are calculating it as what? 366 days. And this extra day is added in the month of which month? It is February. Which is that extra day? It is 28th or 29th? It is 29th ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? That day is being added in the month of, we call it as February. Exactly, yes. Exactly, this we call it as the leap year. Okay now, the second one we call it as, the first one we call it as, it is one revolution 1 year, normal adre 365, it is extra adre leap year we call it as 366 days. The leap year has been celebrated once in how many years? Other 4 years. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once in 4 years we call it as leap year. One extra day has been added. Adine enanta karitivi? 366 days. Now think that if a person is born on the day of, it is 9th of February. Now birthday ingirutte. It is once in 4 years he can celebrate. Once in 4 years he can celebrate. Now sir, ನಾವು ಸೆಲೆಬ್ರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ 4 ವರ್ಷ ಕಾಯ್ಬೇಕಾ, ಅದು ಬೇರೆ ಲ್ಯಾಟಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸೆಲೆಬ್ರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ಬೋದಾ? ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡಿ, ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ at least. Now yesterday we have tried about, it is different time zones. Now can we go and can we celebrate? Not possible allo boss. Not possible. It is ಯಾವುದೇ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋದ್ರು ಕೂಡ we have only, it is one year, is nothing but 365 days ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಬಟ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾ, either they will celebrate on 28th or on March 1st. ಹಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅವರು. Okay, normally this. Normally it is this is majorly the first application. And the second application we call it as, we will get to know about what? It is seasons. We will get to know about seasons. Now how many seasons are being created by it is the earth? It has 4 types of seasons. Now what are the different types of seasons? The first one we call it as summer solstice, winter solstice, the spring and autumn season. Okay now, the spring and autumn season. Next, ಈ ಡಯಾಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಬರ್ಕೋತೀರಾ? ಕಾಣಿಸಿದೆ at least ಹೋಗ್ಲಿ. Okay, first give a heading called as diagrammatic representation of revolution of earth. Diagrammatic representation of, we call it as, it is revolution of earth anta karitivi. Diagrammatic representation. Now under the diagrammatic representation, the first one we call it as sun. Add ಮಾಡಿ. The first one ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದ ಮತ್ತೆ ಬರಿಬೇಕು, ನೋಡಬಾರ್ದು, ನೀವು ತಲೆ ಬಗ್ಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರಿಬೇಕು. It is first one is sun. Diagram sun. Diagrammatic representation of sun. ಆಯ್ತಾ? Now after sun, it is draw elliptical orbit. Draw elliptical orbit. ಆಯ್ತಾ? The farther one between the sun and the earth we call it as what? Aphelion ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ? It is July 4th. ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದ ಮತ್ತೆ ಬರೀಬೇಕು. July 4th. July 4th we call it as what? The farther distance between the earth and the sun we call it as what? Aphelion. Aphelion. ಯಾವಾಗಪ್ಪ? July the 4th. July 4th. And the second one, shortest distance, we call it as perihelion. Between we call it as, or normally we call it as Jan 3rd. Jan 3rd we call it as the perihelion. Aita. Okay. Next add the summer solstice. Summer solstice ಅಲ್ಲಿ. This one, the solstice, it is Tropic of Cancer, should be directly exposed to to the sun, directly exposed to the sun. Now ಅವಾಗ ನಾರ್ದರ್ನ್ ಹೆಮಿಸ್ಫಿಯರ್ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ? NH ಅಂತ ಬರೀರಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಹೈವೇ ಅಲ್ಲ, ನಾರ್ದರ್ನ್ ಹೆಮಿಸ್ಫಿಯರ್. Northern hemisphere will be having what? Summer. Southern hemisphere will be having what? Southern hemisphere will be having winter. Now overall ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ? Overall will be what? Now overall will be the summer solstice. ಯಾವಾಗ ಸರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ 21st June. The 21st June we will be experiencing summer solstice in which hemisphere? Northern hemisphere. Okay now. Second one. And the next one we call it as winter solstice. The winter solstice. Now winter solstice yavaga? December 22nd. Summer solstice andre which part is directly exposed to the vertical rays of the sun? It is Tropic of Capricorn. The Tropic of Capricorn, it is directly exposed to what? Directly exposed to, we call it as directly exposed to vertical rays. Okay now. ಯಾವಾಗ ಸರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ December 22nd. ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ draw equinox in the month of September. Equinox in the month of September. Equinox ಅಂದ್ರೆ southern hemisphere will be having what? Spring ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಚಿಗುರೋದು. The leaves will start to grow. The spring northern autumn season. The overall ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? Equinox. Perfect boss. Equinox. And in the month of March, ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ? It is March. The northern hemisphere we call it as the spring. Northern hemisphere as spring. Southern hemisphere as what? It is southern hemisphere as the autumn. Sir, ಯಾವಾಗ ಸರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ March 21st and September 23rd. March 21st and September 23rd. Okay na? Clear? And last one, when can you experience the complete 6 months of day and 6 months of night? It is poles only. Poles as 6 months day and 6 months night. ಈಗ 6 months day and 6 months night idre, can there be life in poles? Not possible. It is not possible. South Pole and North Pole has 6 months day and 6 month night, and that is the reason extreme temperature irutte, tumba chali and tumba bisi, and adukoskara can there be life here, boss? No, it is no life in the poles, no life near to poles, no life near to, we call it as the poles anta karitivi. Okay now? Yes, exactly, exactly, Riyam, exactly, yes, perfect. Okay, well, this is majorly about our seasons. And the second chapter, that's about our first chapter. Now take some 2 minutes. Now the pattanta first chapter, is it clear? We have discussed about only 3 themes. First theme we call it is about Earth. Second theme we call it as what? It is second one we call it as imaginary lines. And the third one we call it as what? Motions. This we call it as the chapter 1. Now check, take some 2 minutes. Now chapter 1 complete clear anta nodi. Yes, 100%. Pakana. Okay. Now, if it is clear, at least you will be getting a question on this. First chapter, can you get at least a question? Pakka yaade ke liye pura ready idira. It is nothing but you got 2 marks. It's in your pocket now. 2 marks mane barata pakka sure. Now the second one, origin and evolution of Earth. Now sir, under this origin and evolution of Earth, again we have the 3 important themes. The themes. Now, yavu sir 3 important themes andre, the theme 1, theme 2 and theme 3. Now, with respect, if I want to study about the Earth, the first theme we call it as the universe. Second one we call it as the second theme we call it as galaxy. Nan gottu nee ode iralla nimge gottu illa anta. Now what is galaxy? It is which is the hypothesis which studies about galaxy, which is the nearest galaxy. Nodi, it is our own galaxy's Milky Way. The nearest galaxy we call it as Andromeda galaxy. Now what is universe? A group of galaxies we call universe. It consists of, okay no again, it is, I will discuss all the things in a simpler manner. Second theme we call it as galaxy, and the third theme we call it as solar system. Yes or no? Solar system. The solar system, this will be our the 3 things. Sir, theme alli ಏನನ್ನ teach ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ sir ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, now what all things will you teach ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, I will be teaching only 2 things. I'll be teaching only 2 things. In the first theme, I'll be teaching about a concept about universe. The concept about universe. Okay now, universe andre enu? Now which is our universe? How much distance, or what is the distance between universe? When our universe created? ಬೇಸಿಕ್ಸ್ ಅದು ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ, ಬಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಕೇಳಲ್ಲ. But question will be with respect to second one, we call it as the hypothesis. The hypothesis to study about the universe. Which is the hypothesis which studies about universe? Mains question. Now which is the hypothesis which studies about universe antandre? It is expanding hypothesis. It is also called as Hubble hypothesis ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ. ಕೇಳಿದಿರಾ? It is Edwin Hubble hypothesis theory. ಇದು ಯಾವುದು ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಕೇಳಿರ್ತೀರಾ, ಬಿಗ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ ಥಿಯರಿ ಅಂತ. ಆಲ್ ದ ಸೇಮ್. ಓಕೆನಾ? It is Big Bang theory. Now this Big Bang theory is given by Hubble. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ Hubble's Big Bang theory ಅಂತ ಕೂಡ ಕರೀತೀವಿ. Hypothesis. ನೋಡಿ ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ. It is the graphical representation image ಜೊತೆಗೆ it is the steps. Clear? This is our first one. The second one majorly we call it as, now I'll discuss about galaxy. Again there are two things. One we call it as what? The concept hypothesis. The concept hypothesis. Now which is the hypothesis which studies about galaxy? Which? Yadu. Now the hypothesis we call it as nebular hypothesis theory ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ. ಕೇಳಿದಿರಾ? At least ಓದಿರ್ತೀರಾ. It is that ಓದಿರ್ತೀರಾ, but nebular ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. I know. Yes or no? It is the most neglected chapter ಇದೆ. No one teaches us. ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ ನಾನು. Because this is more complicated. ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. And even the faculty does not know this. Record ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ. I can say boldly. It is majority or many faculty does not know this chapter. ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ because there is a mix of science as well as the arts. Because without knowing science, he might be good at arts, not at science. But if you are good at science, not at arts. But if you mix ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ origin and evolution. Okay, so ನೋಡೋಣ. It is ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನೋಡೋಣ. Okay ಅಲ್ವಾ? This theory we call it as nebular hypothesis theory. Nebular hypothesis theory. And the last one we call it as, the last theme we call it as the solar system. The last theory we call it as, the last one we call it as solar system. Again solar system will again two things. One we call it as what? One we call it as concept. One we call it as concept. And second one we call it as what? Theory or hypothesis. Yes or no? It is the hypothesis. Now sir, which is the hypothesis which studies about solar system or which studies about the star or which studies about the planets? And the theory we call it as planet-Zamiel's theory. ಕೇಳಿದಿರಾ? It is planet-Zamiel theory ಬಗ್ಗೆ. Now ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇದನ್ನ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ we will be studying about our solar system. Now in our solar system we have how many stars, how many planets, how many moons, ಎಲ್ಲದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ. Now while studying about that things, we will be discussing about the Mercury, the Venus, the Earth, the Mars, the Jupiter, the Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. Total 8 planets plus their moons, plus their stars, plus the dust particles, asteroids, meteoroids, meteors, all those things. In our third part. But majority questions come from Yelina sir and third theme. But without discussing these two themes, I can't discuss these three. But this is hardly, it requires some 1 hour, we'll discuss this, but it requires at least some one class. Nothing but 3 hours for studying about the solar system. Okay, Alva. Today we'll start and we'll discuss how much work possible. Okay, Alva. Done. Today we won't be rushing, rather we'll discuss one by one. Now sir, idikinta munche, what do you mean by this origin? What do you mean by this evolution? Now is Earth created overnight? Or is that, or it has originated and it has evolved? My second question or my first question as such, first one we call it as, now Earth, is it created overnight? overnight boom ಅಂತ ಆಗಿ earth ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾ? Now if not, how earth originated? How earth originated and how our earth evolved? ಬೇಗನೆ. Now what is the origination? Origin ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? It is starting point ಅಂತ. Origination. In a simpler term, can I say? It is can I say? Exactly Ria, exactly Neetu, exactly Sam. Okay. It is Nana Shamsi, Kannada. It is I can't use much. Okay, look. Others I'm trying. It is with my limitations, with my restrictions, I'm using it. Okay. No, madam. Okay, look. Origination ಏನಪ್ಪ? No, what is origination? It is origination andre. Can I say starting point? ಹೌದು. Origination means the starting point. Origination means the starting point. First one. And second one, what do you mean by evolution? Evolution andre ಏನು? Evolution is nothing but the step by step gradual movement. The gradual movement of earth from simpler to the present day earth. ಹೌದೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ? ನಾವು evolution ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಸರ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, evolution we call it as gradual movement. Gradual movement from ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಎಲ್ಲಿಗೆ? From the simpler earth to what? The simpler earth to, we can't say complex earth, but we can say that present day earth. Simpler, the earth to the, it is present day. Present day. Now sir, now can I say, adu present day ಆದ್ರೆ, this is our traditional earth. ಹೌದೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ? Now traditional earth is also called as primordial earth. Now what is primordial? What is prime? The smaller, the simpler. The primordial is nothing but the simpler or the smaller. ಅದು ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? The primordial earth ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. We call it as what? The primordial earth. The primordial earth. Whereas this we call it as what? The present day earth. Now which one had a capacity to sustain life? Present day earth. Now present day earth has the potential to sustain life andre, don't you think the earth has underwent the different changes? Yes or no? It is the earth has underwent ಏನಾಗಿದೆಯಪ್ಪ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, it has underwent ಏನಿಲ್ಲಿ? The changes ಆಗಿ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ? The present day earth ಆಗಿದೆ. ಈ ಒಂದು ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? Evolution of earth. Whereas starting point ಅನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? We call it as origin. Sir, if you want to study about the starting point, where earth started and how earth evolved, I need to know about first with respect to my universe. Yes or no? Can I directly jump into earth? Or should I need to know about first universe? Within this universe, zoom ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ think that this is the complete universe. Zoom ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಏನ್ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ ಫಸ್ಟ್? Galaxy. ಇನ್ನು zoom ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ it is solar system. ಇನ್ನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ zoom ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ will be getting what? It is ನಮ್ಮ planet ಸಿಗ್ತವೆ. ಆ planet ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು planet ಯಾವ್ದಪ್ಪ ಅಂದ್ರೆ Earth. Hope you are getting it. Now sir, now what is the chronology with respect to the, it is our universe andre, which is the largest one? Which is the largest one? It is universe. The first one we call it as the universe. Now the smaller form of universe we call it as what? It has universe smaller. ಯಾವ್ದಪ್ಪ smaller ದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? Galaxy. Now can I say group of galaxy we call it universe? ಹೌದೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ? Group of galaxy we call it as universe, and galaxy the smallest form ಏನು? It is the stars. The group of stars we call it as what? Galaxy. Group of galaxy ಅನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? ಆಪಲ್ ಫೋನ್. Group of galaxies we call it as universe. Now within this n number of stars, one star we call it as what? ಏನು challenging star, which is that star? The one star we call it as the sun and the planets. ಅದನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? Solar system. Solar system. Now the solar system consists of, ಏನೇನ್ ಕನ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತಪ್ಪ ಈ solar system ಅಲ್ಲಿ? It consists of the stars, it consists of planets, it consists of the moons, it consists of the miscellaneous. Okay na? Yes or no? Now in our solar system we have how many stars? It is one star, that is called as what? Sun. It is one star, perfect. It is, we call it as sun. It is ಒಂದೇ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು. Now how many planets ಇದೆ? How many planets? 8, including Earth. It has 8 planets. Now inner planets and outer planets ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Today we'll discuss all those things. Now how many moons? How many moons was? It has 0 na, 1 andre no. It has more than 160 plus moons. But which planet has the highest amount of moons? It is Saturn, H2, more than 150. It is precisely more than 145. But highest is only Saturn. It is, I can say, more than 160 plus are in number in our solar system. Now again, all the last one, miscellaneous, comes under asteroid, dust particles, Kuiper belt. It is followed by asteroid, meteors. Okay now, no other again, we'll see all those things. Miscellaneous. Is it clear now? Now, universe andre, in a simpler manner, can I say, Barkodi Kelskoli, it's a group of what? Group of galaxies. We call it as what? Universe. Now, which is the hypothesis which is present to study about universe? It is a Big Bang theory. Okay, alva? Big Bang theory. My question here is, my simple question here is, what is the difference between theory and hypothesis? Scientific? Try at least. I'm making a break. Even right or wrong, I want answers. Okay, correct. Then what is hypothesis and theory? It's okay, try. Next page code loudly. Really. Hypothesis and theory. Now theory and hypothesis baratta, hypothesis and theory baratta. Mati ಹೇಳಿ. First, I want answers. ಹೇಳಪ್ಪ. Scientifically proved, we call it as the hypothesis. Okay. Next. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸೈಂಟಿಫಿಕ್ ಪ್ರೂವ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಥಿಯರಿ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿದ್ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಬಟ್ ಆಪೋಸಿಟ್. ಹೌದು ಇಲ್ಲ? ನಾವು ಹೈಪೋಥೆಸಿಸ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಸರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಅನ್ಸಿರೋದನ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ರೆ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಅದನ್ನ ಹೈಪೋಥೆಸಿಸ್. ನಾವು ಥಿಂಕ್ ದಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಅರ್ತ್ ಹಂಗಿದೆ ಹಿಂಗಿದೆ ಹಿಂಗಿದೆ ಹಂಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಕೊಟ್ರೆ ಏನದು. ಬಟ್ ಇಫ್ ಐ ಗಿವ್ ಇಟ್ ವಿತ್ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್, ಹೌದೋ ಇಲ್ವೋ, ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಈ ಒಂದು ಥಿಯರಿಯನ್ನ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ಆಗಿ ತೋರಿಸಿ ಟೀಚ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್? ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ಒನ್. It is ground level ನೋಡಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರೆ the practical part. Yes, ಗೊತ್ತಿರಲಿ. Hypothesis, theory, and we call it as the practical part. Now sir, now hypothesis andre ಏನು sir ಅಂದ್ರೆ hypothesis nothing but it's a scientific one. ಅದು ಏನು ವೇಸ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ. It is all these are scientific. But ಇಲ್ಲಿ without what? Without proof or without evidence or without the proof. ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಕರೆಕ್ಟು, ಬಟ್ ಅದನ್ನ ನನ್ನ ಹತ್ರ ಪ್ರೂವ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಗುರು. ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ಧರ್ಮಸ್ಥಳದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಲೆಗಳಾಗಿದ್ದಾವೆ ಗೊತ್ತು, ಬಟ್ ಪ್ರೂಫ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅದೇನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? ಹೈಪೋಥೆಸಿಸ್. ಎಸ್ ಆರ್ ನೋ? ಈಗ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಯಾವ್ದಾರ ಒಂದು ರಾಮದೇವ್ ಬಾಬಾ ಯಾರೋ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಹಂಗಾಗಿತ್ತು, ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಓದ್ ಲೋಕದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಶಿವ ಆಗಿದ್ದೆ, ನಾನು ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಆಗಿದ್ದೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಅ ಹೈಪೋಥೆಸಿಸ್, ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ನೋ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್. ಬಟ್ ಇಫ್ ಹಿ ಗಿವ್ಸ್ ವಿತ್ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಏನಾಗತ್ತೆ? ಥಿಯರಿ. ಅದನ್ನ ನಮಗ್ ಕಣ್ಣಿಗೆ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟಿಕಲ್. ಎಸ್ ಆರ್ ನೋ? ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಟೇಕ್ an example of sir. Now take an example of universe. Now how universe originated ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ can we give it with evidence? Why can't we give it with evidence? Because it has been created since time immemorial. I think that it has created some 13.7 billion years ago. How can I go to 13.7 billion years and how can I give an evidence? In create aitu anta. But can it be theory or can it be evidence? No boss. But it will be just as what? It will be just it is scientific study ashte. Adana enanta kariತೀವಿ? Hypothesis. Now if I give a scientific study with proof kotre theory. Now scientific study ಜೊತೆಗೆ it is proof ಜೊತೆಗೆ ground ಅಲ್ಲಿ implement ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ we call it what? Practical. Yes or no? Yes, done. Now whatever I'm teaching you, now without providing evidence ಕೊಟ್ರೆ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? ಬಟ್ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಮೂಲಕ ಪ್ರೂವ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ನೋಡಿ ಅಂತ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟಿಕಲ್. ಎಸ್ ಆರ್? ದಿಸ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಹೈಪೋಥೆಸಿಸ್, ಥಿಯರಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟಿಕಲ್. ಓಕೆನಾ? ಎಸ್, ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಯ್ತಾ? ಓಕೆ. ನೌ ದಿಸ್ ಆರ್ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಒನ್. ನೌ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಮೇಜರ್ಲಿ ದ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ ನಾ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಅದೇ ಫೈನಲ್. ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಕೇಳಂಗಿಲ್ಲ. ವೈ? Because there is no proof. Whatever I say, that is final. Why? Because there is no proof to say that it is I am wrong anta. Yes or no? But I won't teach you the it is wrong statements, but rather I will give you the popular hypotheses which are at least been accepted by majority scientists. ಈಗ ನೋಡಿ, ಬಿಗ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ ಥಿಯರಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರೆ we have recreated that big bang. How our universe originated, how our big bang originated anta. But we does not have a proof saying that ಹೆಂಗಾಯ್ತು, ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಆಯ್ತು, ಏಕಾಯ್ತು ಅಂತ. But we can recreate, and that recreated one we call it as what? Hypothesis. Which is the recreated one we have. Yadapa recreated one. The recreated one we call it as yadu. It is Big Bang theory. We call it as Big Bang theory. We call it as Big Bang theory. And the second one, now to study about the galaxy and to study about the star, we have a hypothesis called as which hypothesis? The nebular hypothesis. Nebular hypothesis. And the third one to study about the majorly about the planets. We call it what? So solar system ilva antandre the sun is also part of nebular. But planets we call it as the planet Zamians. The planet Zamians anta kariತೀವಿ. Okay now, this is about majorly are just a blueprint. Now we'll go for a break. Now after our break we'll continue the rest. Okay alva? Then this is about majorly about we call it as the second chapter. We'll be discussing all those things. Now we'll go for a break of 15 minutes. Now we'll come back at what time? It is 6 o'clock. Sharp 6 o'clock bani. Okay na? We'll start it. Online, I hope it is clear. Yes. Okay, shall we continue? Yes. The next one we call it as online. Hope it is audible. Okay. Now coming back to the next one, we call it as the first one given called as which one? It is first one given called as universe. First one given called as a universe. Now what is universe? ಏನಪ್ಪ universe andre? What is universe? The first one, universe, I have already said. What should be the blueprint for this studying about this universe? I have already said this. It is first one, we call it as the concept, or we call it as definition. The second one, we call it as the universe consists of, the universe consists of ಏನೇನು? We'll see the third one, we call it as what? The hypothesis. The third one we call it as hypothesis. Yes or no? Now shall we discuss one by one? Now the first one, what is the definition of a universe? What is universe? Now in a simpler manner, what is universe? Now universe means what? It is a group of what? Group of galaxy. Group of galaxy, we call it as what? The universe. First one. And the second one, the universe is made up of or consists of what? Now which all things? Now universe is made up of or consists of, can I say, a galaxy? Galaxy? Yes or no? Within galaxy, the universe is made up of what? The stars. Within the stars, the solar system, it is made up of what? The planets. Now within these planets, we have what? We have moons. And it also has different miscellaneous particles called as the dust particles. It also includes dwarf planets like Pluto. Howdo ilvo? Dwarf planet dust particles, followed by dark matter, dark energy, followed by ice particles. Ice particles, yes or no? Ice particles, all those things we call it as, it is made up of. The third major important one, when was this universe created? When was this universe created? Now when? First. Now when was our universe created, Andre? It has created in and around the 13.7 the billion years ago. Be cautious here. It has created around, we call it as 13.7 the billion years ago. The 13.7 billion years ago, it has this universe is what? Created. Okay now? Yes or no? These are the created. And the next one, now what is the distance? What is the distance, or we call it as, what is the diameter of, what is diameter? Now diameter is ಏನು? Fast. It is diameter andre 2r, nothing but 2 times the radius. Now what is radius? From the center to the any part of the circle we call it as what? R, and the 2r we call it as what? The diameter. Now can we measure the universe? Tape itkondo. Now how can we measure? How can we measure the astronomical objects? This has been a question. Now how to measure the astronomical objects? It is astronomical objects are being measured via light years. Highly and highly important one. Highly important one, they've already asked a question, or for sure there will be a question. Now, measuring of astronomical objects are being measured via, we call it as what? We call it as the light years. Now, what is the speed of light? What is the speed of light? It is 3.2. It is 3.2 what? It is the 3.2, we call it as, it is 3.2. We call it as 3.2 the light years. Now, light years under the fastest one is light, and in light mulaka measure madadre, we call it as what? The light years. The light years in a simpler manner, we call it as what? We call it as the measurement to measure the, we call it as measurement of the astronomical objects. Sir, my question here is, why light andre? It is nothing but it is one of the speedest or the fastest one to measure, and the 3.2 meter per second, that is the speed it can travel. Now, based on that light year, we are measuring which one? Astronomical objects. Yes or no? Yes or no? It is what is light year? It is an instrument which is used to measure, the astronomical objects. It is measure astronomical the objects. Now, sir, my question here is, now how much time will it take to measure the diameter of we call it as universe? Now, normally it is the diameter is unknown. The diameter of universe is unknown, but with hypothesis or with calculation, it is how much light years? It is 92 billion light years is the diameter of what? The universe. So huge, so big, and so big. It is 92. It is billion light years is the what? The diameter or distance of what? The diameter or distance of, we call it as, it is universe. Yes or no? This is about our first one, the concept, whereby it consists of. The third one, it is created when the diameter is 20. Okay now? Yes or no? Now, before discussing about our hypothesis, idhu markobidtira? Okay. First one, now dividing called as universe. Now, under our universe, the first one we call it as what? The first one we call it as definition. What's the definition of universe? It's a group of galaxy. We call it as what? It is fast. Everyone should write. It's a group of galaxy. We call it as. It is group of galaxy. We call it as universe. First one. The second one. Artha ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? Yes or no? Hope you guys are understanding. How many percent? 100? Pakka? Okay. 101 ಅಲ್ಲ ತಾನೆ? Okay. Yes. The second one. It consists of galaxies. It consists of the galaxies. Second, what second one? It is stars. Now I am going it in a organized fashion. Galaxies, the stars, within stars, the planets within planets, the moons within moons, the dust particle perfect within dust particles, the rocks, the ice materials, all the things comes under the planets. Okay now. The third one. Now this universe is created around how many billion years ago? It is 13.7 billion years ago. Can we say exactly 13 point anta? No, it is approximately. It is approximate. All this I have already said. the complete chapter is just an assumption, no exact evidence. It is approximately 13.7. It is the billion years ago. Is the creation of what? Is the creation of, we call it as, is the creation of what? It is universe. What is the fourth one? Now astronomical objects are being measured via, how? It is measured via light years. Measured via light years. Now is the distance, is it known or unknown? Distance is unknown, but approximate range here is 92 billion light years. Now why light years? Now what is the time taken up by the sun rays? What is the time taken up by the sun rays to reach the earth? It is 8 minutes. It takes 8 minutes to reach the, it is the sun rays from sun towards where? Earth. It takes 8 ನಿಮಿಷ ತಗೊಳುತ್ತೆ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ 8 ನಿಮಿಷ or 8 minutes. Yes, on this we call it as the majorly the light years. Now from now on the astronomical objects are measured via light years. Already UPSC question. The UPSC question, how many the light years? How many light years andre? The 92 billion light years. The 92, the billion light years. Yes or no, boss? Yes, done. This is about our first one. And the second one we call it as, the second one we call it as what? The hypothesis. The hypothesis. Now which is that hypothesis? It is, which is that hypothesis andre? Which is that hypothesis? It is first one we call it as the Big Bang theory. Big Bang or theory. Big Bang or theory. It is also called as what? It is Edwin Hubble hypothesis. It is Edwin Hubble hypothesis. Now who is this Hubble? Who is this Hubble? A geographer who gave a concept of Big Bang theory. Who gave a concept of Big Bang theory, Edwin Hubble, or it is also called as expanding hypothesis theory. Expanding hypothesis theory anta kariತೀವಿ. Okay, now yes or no? This is our first one. Now whenever we are discussing about any hypothesis, what should be our blueprint? Now what will you study? If there is hypothesis, what will you study? Nange ಬೇಗ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕೀಗ. It is definition of a theory. Okay. Now first one, I won't study about definition, rather I will study about this theory has been proposed in which year? Yes or no? It is proposed, the theory has been proposed in which year? First one, proposed in which year? And the second one, proposed by? Yes or no? The third one we call it as about the hypothesis itself. About the hypothesis itself. Yes or no? Exactly online it is Neetu, exactly yes. It is Hubble hypothesis. Now Hubble hypothesis has been, it is or I can say reinstated as James Webb telescope. Where? Now Hubble telescope in USA is the traditional telescope. Now recently we have replaced that Hubble telescope with James Webb telescope. The most advanced telescope of the world ಯಾವುದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ James Webb telescope, which is present in where? USA, United States of America. The most advanced telescope. The most advanced the telescope? Yes or no? Yes. These are the first one. Now we need to discuss about this three. Now before discussing about this three, we will discuss about one by one. Adadmele nane barusteni. Okay now. Now first one kelskoli. Adadmele it is I will discuss. Now sir, my first question here is the first part here is, now this has been proposed in which year? It is proposed in which year, sir? Antandre, we have 2 years here. We have 2 years. One we call it as early 1920s. Early 1920s. First one. And the second one what? It is later 1920s. The second one, the first one early and the second one we call it as what? The later 1920s. Now what is early and what is late? What is early and what is late? It is before 1920 and after 1920. Now we have 2 important dates here. Now the first important date we call it as the concept of Big Bang theory. Understand my word here. The concept of Big Bang theory was propounded by yaru? No. It is George Lemaitre. The first one, the concept of Big Bang theory was not propounded by Edwin Hubble, be cautious here, but first propounded by, it is first propounded by again a geographer called as yaru? It is George Lemaitre. George Lemaitre. Now the second one, there is also an evidence which has been proposed by yaru anta, proposed by George Lemaitre. But now after this proposal, who gave the scientific evidence to this? Or we call it as most accepted one which has been given by, we call it as Edwin Hubble. The most accepted, the definition which has been given by, we call it as Edwin Hubble. And because of his immense contribution, this Big Bang theory, it has been renamed as what? It is Hubble's expanding hypothesis theory. It has been renamed as what? Expanding hypothesis theory. Yes or no? Yes. This is majorly our first one. First we have covered here, and the second one which has been proposed by. Yes or no? The first one is clear. Now sir, the second one we call it as about hypothesis. Understand here now. Understand here. The first one, first phase, approximately during 13.7 billion years ago. 13.7 billion years ago, there was a single, it is, we call it as, what is the single? It is the single atom. Understand here, be cautious, concentration should be higher. We had a single atom. Now the single atom had huge amount of what? Huge amount of higher temperature. The smaller object had higher temperature, high temperature. Idra jotege, we also had what? Higher pressure, followed by unimaginable gravitational force. We had the higher temperature, higher pressure, higher, it is gravitational force, higher density. Now think that it is whatever the students which is present here. Now if I add all these persons, into a single room with a size of 2 to 3 persons, now what will happen? Now will the temperature be lesser? I think that now you are sitting freely. But if I add it in this cabin, what will happen? What will be the temperature? Higher temperature. What will be the density? Higher density. What will be the pressure? Higher. What will be the gravitational force? Unimaginable gravitational force. Now, if a particular smaller size atom, if it is having higher temperature, higher pressure, higher gravitational force and higher density, now what will happen? Now this atom will sustain for a particular period of time. Now after some time, don't you think this unimaginable atom will start to happen what? Will start to explode. Yes or no? Will it start to explode? Now once if it is exploded, the different atoms will start to move towards here. Will move towards the different regions. It is the galaxies are moving towards the different regions. Little galaxies. It is expanding with a single one with unimaginable size. With unimaginable size, when it exploded when 13.7 billion years ago. Now don't you think the different galaxies have exploded and now it is moving towards what? Away from each other. Now this movement of galaxies away from each other, we call it as what? We call it as expanding universe theory. It is also called as what? Big Bang. What is Big Bang? Sudden explosion, and that sudden explosion was, it is heavier. Now after explosion, the temperature will start to reduce or temperature will be higher after explosion. It starts to decrease. Now the temperature was intense and the temperature was the 2 lakh degrees Celsius during this period of time. But later on, the temperature started to cool down and the temperature reduced to 4000 degrees Celsius. And this hypothesis, we call it as what? This hypothesis, we call it as Edwin-Hubble hypothesis theory. It is also called as what? Expanding universe theory. It is also called as Big Bang theory. Yes or no, boss? 100% clear aita? Now shall we write one by one in different phases? The first one. Now give heading called as it is hypothesis. It is the hypothesis. Now first one, before writing about hypothesis, what should be the first blueprint? It is year. The first one we call it as year. Now which year? Online fast. Yes. It is mains question. It is star mark add ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. This is UPSC mains question. This has been already asked. Expected question also. Big Bang hypothesis theory. Okay now. Now first one we call it as year. Now we have two important years. Now one is early 1920s. And the second one we call it as what? Late 1920s. Now in early 1920s, the concept has been proposed by Yaru. It is propounded by George Lemaitre. Yes or no, boss? It is George Lemaitre. The concept has been propounded by George Lemaitre. Now, what do you mean by propounded? Proposed by anta. ಈ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಪ್ರಪೋಸ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥವ್ರು ಯಾರು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ it is George Lemaitre. And the second one we call it as later 1920s. The later 1920s, the concept has been, or we call it as the concept of most accepted one. The most accepted one has been propounded by Yaru. It is Edwin Hubble. You should open your mouth. Big name. Yaru. It is Edwin Hubble. Edwin Hubble. Now Edwin Hubble ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ? The most accepted evidence has been provided. The most accepted evidence. Okay na boss? Most accepted evidence has been proposed. It is accepted evidence. Second one. The third one we call it as about the hypothesis. About the hypothesis. Now, with respect to hypothesis, write this diagram. A single tiny ball-like structure or an atom. Single tiny ball-like structure. ಏನು ಬರ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಂಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಡಯಾಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಅದ ಬರಿಬೇಕು. Single tiny ball-like structure with unimaginable temperature, unimaginable density, unimaginable gravitational force. Yes or no? It started to explode. Explode ಆಗತ್ತೆ. ಯಾವಾಗ explode ಆಗತ್ತೆ? Approximately 13.7 billion years ago. Now explode ಆದಾಗ, don't you think the galaxies started to move towards or move away from each other? Now when it started to move away from each other, the temperature started to reduce and the formation of the first atom called as hydrogen and helium is formed. Yes or no? Yes. This is majorly about the diagrammatic representation. Adadmele, this we call it as this hypothesis. We have three important stages. The three important stages. Now, what is the different stage? What is the first stage? What was the first stage? Begin. It is first stage called as, it is stage 1 called as the tiny ball-like structure. The tiny ball-like structure. The tiny ball-like structure with what? With high temperature, high pressure, high gravitational force with unimaginable density. First one, a tiny ball-like structure with unimaginable temperature, pressure, gravitational force and density in a smaller volume, in a smaller region. Yes or no? In a smaller volume. First stage. Second stage, when it is too compact, don't you think it will start to explode? Now in the second stage, the explosion of this ball-like structure took place. Second one we call it as explosion of ball-like structure took place approximately during which period of time? It is which period of time? It is approximately 13.7 billion years ago. 13.7 billion years ago. Yes or no? Second, now after explosion, what will happen, boss? It is after explosion, the galaxies started to expand. Galaxies started to expand. Yes or no? Galaxies started to expand. The second one the temperature dropped, yes or no? Temperature dropped, and the creation of a first atom called as hydrogen, and we call it as what? Helium has been created. H and H we call it as helium. Hydrogen and hydrogen mix we call it as what? Helium. Hydrogen and helium has been created. Hydrogen and helium is being created. Yes or no? Hydrogen and helium is being created. Yes or no? Yes, this we call it as what? It is about the complete aspect of theme 1. The theme 1 called as about universe. Yes or no? Take some 30 seconds. Nodi patanta. Done? No doubts? First? Okay now? Okay. The second one we call it as galaxy. The second theme we call it as yadu? It is galaxy. We call it as galaxy. Now ಏನಪ್ಪ galaxy ಅಂದ್ರೆ? Again same blueprint. Now, with respect to same blueprint, the first one we call it as, what is the definition of galaxy? What is the definition? The definition of galaxy, we call it as what? It is group of stars. Group of stars, we call it as galaxy. Group of star, we call it as galaxy. The first one. Group of star, we call it as galaxy. And second one, this consists of what? This consists of, now it's all things. We call it as the stars, below stars, the planets, within planets, we call it as dwarf planets, like Pluto. It is planets, dwarf planets. The Pluto. Now Pluto has been dropped from what? Planet criteria. Now we'll see while discussing about planet, what is the definition of planets, which have been given by International Astronomical Union also. Now recently International Astronomical Union, it is the launching site of Chandrayaan 3 has been declared as what? Now what is the site? Now naming of different astronomical objects are done by Yaro. So can I name astronomical objects based on India? Now this is normally done by International Astronomical Union, IAU. Now recently we call it as the launching site of the Chandrayaan 2 and Chandrayaan 3 has been named after what? Online first. Has been named after, it is Shiv Shakti Point and Tiranganta name agide. It has been named after what? The Tirang and Shiv Shakti. Now this Tirang and Shiv Shakti, this has been confirmed by Yaru. The IAU, they have named after, it is the Tirang, and the second one we call it as what? The Shiv Shakti. This naming part of different astronomical objects are taken up by International Astronomical Union. Now while discussing about planets, we will discuss about the definition which has been given by IAU. We will discuss about the definition which has been given by IAU also will discuss. Yes or no? Yes, but as of now not sufficient or not required. As of now it is not required. But it is dwarf planets and below dwarf planets we call it as the asteroids. Asteroids we call it as the moons. We call it as the ice particles, the rocky substance. All these things comes under the consist. And the third one, what is the third one? What is the third one? It is measured. It is measured. Now, how these galaxies are being measured? How our astronomical objects are being measured? It is via light years. It is measured via, we call it as, it is measured via, we call it as which one? It is light years. Now, which is our own galaxy? It is our own galaxy, we call it as the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way galaxy, and this Milky Way galaxy, it is around 1.5 to 2 lakh light years. It is 1.5 to the 2 lakh light years. The 2 lakh light years, yes or no? 1.5 to the diameter years, it is 1.5 to the 2 lakh light years is the distance of what? Distance of our Milky Way galaxy. Now, this is fine, sir. Now, which is the nearest galaxy to our, it is Milky Way? It is Andromeda galaxy. This Andromeda galaxy, it is considered to be what? It is Andromeda. Now, Andromeda nearest Chandra, Chandralotali idya? Matte elli? Now, sir, ಎಷ್ಟು ದೂರ ಸರ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಎಷ್ಟು ದೂರ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ದೂರ ಇಲ್ಲ, that 2 million light years ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಇಷ್ಟೇ, the 2 million light years. That is the distance or the nearest star or the nearest galaxy of what? Nearest galaxy of Milky Way galaxy. The nearest galaxy to our Milky Way galaxy we call it as what? Andromeda galaxy. Yes or no? No. But can it collide? Chance illa. Why? Why can't it collide? It is, why can't it collide, sir? Andre, because now understand this Hubble hypothesis. Now all the galaxies are moving away from where? Moving away from each other. Now it is think that it is, we have two bikes, we have two persons. Now one is moving in opposite direction. Now can it collide? No. Adhe riti, if a person is moving in this cone shape, can it collide? No. Hope you getting it. Yes or no? Can it collide andre galaxies? Can it collide andre? No. But complete and known as sir andre nanu gottilla. But as of the theory which has been given by Hubble, it is not colliding or it won't collide because that is the information we have. But collide jamanದಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಬಹುದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ yes or no? Yes, it can possibility we can't say, but majorly we call it as, but majorly it won't collide. It won't collide because of Edwin the Hubble hypothesis theory. Yes or no? And these are major one, we call it as the basics. Now, sir, what are the different types of galaxies do we have? Exactly or exactly yes, exactly Sheila, Tirang, Shiv Shakti, exactly perfect, yes. It is group of stars we have discussed. Now, sir, what are the different types of galaxy we have? The different types of galaxy, there are two types of galaxy. There are two types of galaxy. One we call it as what? One we call it as the spiral galaxy, And the second one we call it what? It is elliptical galaxy. The first one we call it as the spiral galaxy. Now spiral ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಸರ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂಥರ ಭೂಚಕ್ರ ತರ. Spiral, this we call it as what? The spiral galaxy. And the second one we call it as what? The second one we call it as elliptical galaxy. Elliptical galaxy. Now this elliptical galaxy is nothing but it is random. Hope you're getting it. Now this we call it as shape is spiral, whereas this shape we call it as what? Elliptical. And sir, and after all these things, if the stars are concentrated, where it is concentrated? It is concentrated at the center. The stars, if it is concentrated at the center, we call it as what? A spiral. And the stars are also, what? Uniform in nature. If the stars are uniform and the concentration of stars, if it is at the center, such a type of galaxies we call it as what? Spiral galaxy. If the stars are present in what manner? It is random manner, we call it as elliptical galaxy. We call it as elliptical galaxy. This is our second one. This is our second one. Yes or no? Yes. And the third one we call it as the hypothesis. The third one we call it as the hypothesis. Now which is that hypothesis which talks about galaxy? It is nebular hypothesis theory. Now understand nebular hypothesis theory. Now think that it is we have different materials. Now that materials we call it as non-uniform. The non-uniform matter and energy. Yes or no? Now understand this. Artha agile andre you won't even understand any part of geography. But this is highly important one. Now it is first one we call it as don't you think that different objects, different size objects, this we call it as the object A. Yes or no, boss? And the second one we call it as object B. Now the different objects will be having different size. Now A object is having what size? The A object is having larger size. B object is having what? Smaller size. Now because of the size, don't you think this larger one will be having it has larger energy and larger gravitational force also? Yes or no? It is this larger materials will be having it is because of larger volume. It will be having what? It is larger energy and larger gravitational force. Larger gravitational force. Now if that is the case, don't you think this A part will start to attract the smaller one towards its center? Yes or no? Now the attracted one. Now understand my question here. It is this one. This is the single one. Now the single one attracts. The single one attracts what? The smaller object towards where? The smaller object towards the center. Now if it starts to move towards the center, the volume will start to increase or volume will start to decrease? The volume will start to increase. Now volume jasti adaga, don't you think the core part will be having higher gravitational force compared to the surrounding regions? Yes or no? Now the core part will start to push towards the center. Now as and when the surface parts push towards the center, the temperature will start to increase or will start to decrease? The temperature will start to increase. Now more compression starts with more temperature rise. Now more temperature rise adre. Now don't you think the molecules which are present within this core region will start to melt? Yes or no? Now when the molecule starts to melt because of huge amount of temperature, don't you think when the molecules are melting and that melt adaga, the reaction takes place, and that reaction we call it as what? The nuclear fusion reaction. Understand my question here? It is first one under my stage one. Under my stage one, it is in the universe. They'll be having it is the different matter and energy. Now out of this different matter and energy, the larger one will start to attract all the different smaller gravitational force molecules towards its center. Now when it starts to attract towards the center, don't you think volume starts to increase? Now when the volume starts to increase, the compression from all the sides, the molecules will start to push. Why? Because the gravitational force which are present in the center is attracting. Now when it starts to attract towards the center, don't you think the compression takes place? Now when there is a compression, the temperature will start to rise. Now when the temperature rise, it is the molecules which are present in the center, not in the complete region, but only in the center region, will start to melt and the reaction takes place, and that reaction we call it as what? It is fusion. Now what is fusion? It is the mix or melting up of two molecules. Fuse. When this molecules fuse, don't you think it releases an energy, and that energy we call it as radiation, and that radiation we call it as the solar rays. Yes or no? Now sir, all this are fine. What about the remaining part? What about the remaining surrounding part? Now because of lesser gravitational force, it will start to escape towards the universe. Yes or no? It will start to escape towards the universe, and that escaped one consolidates, and that consolidated one we call it as planets. Hope you are getting it. Mata ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. The new slide. ಅರ್ಥ ಆದ್ರೆ ಮುಗ್ದೋಯ್ತು. It is, if you are done, it is tomorrow I will give you the detailed explanation again. Now the first one we call it as, this is universe. This is universe. Now universe as the matter and energy. Now does this matter as uniform energy or a non-uniform energy and matter? Non-uniform matter and energy. Now few will be having higher gravitational force, and few will be having what? The few will be having it is lesser matter and lesser energy. If that is the case, don't you think this higher gravitational force one will start to attract towards the center? Now this attracted one we call it as what? Nebula. The attracted one we call it as what? Nebula. Now when this nebula is being compressed, there's our center. Now it is the lower gravitational force is compressing this core region. Compressing this core region. Now when it gets compressed, don't you think the size starts to increase? The volume starts to increase? Yes or no, boss? The volume starts to increase. Now out of this, which one will be having higher gravitational force, or the complete volume will be having the same gravitational force? It is center will be having what? Higher gravitational force. Nothing but this one will be having what? Higher gravitational force. Now in this core region, there is it has temperature rise because of higher gravitational force and because of huge compressional force. Yes or no? It is this core region as a what force? Higher gravitational force. Now higher gravitational force leads to creation of what? The higher temperature. Now higher temperature leads to what? It is the nuclear fusion reaction. The different molecules are fused, and this fused one gives rise to a radiation called as what radiation, boss? The solar rays or the stars releases energy, and that energy we call it as twinkling of stars. Twinkle, twinkle ಆಗ್ತಿರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ. Now what is that? The reaction. The radiation which is released from where? Which is released from the core part of the nebula, and that core part we call it as what? It is via the nuclear fusion reaction. Yes sir? Yes. Now sir, now this is our core. Now don't you think we have this peripheral region? We have this peripheral region? Yes or no? Now this peripheral region, above this core region we have peripheral region. Now will this peripheral region, will it be having lesser gravitational force or higher gravitational force? Lesser gravitational force. Now if it is lesser gravitational force, will the core attract or will it start to release toward the universe? Now how will it start to release toward the universe, sir? Antandre, because of continuous rotation. Because of continuous rotation, this has been thrown out. Because of continuous rotation, this is what? This is thrown out to the different regions because of lower gravitational force. Now this thrown out part in different direction, again because of gravitational force, it will start to attract the smaller molecules in universe. It will start to attract smaller molecules. It will start to attract the smaller molecules. It will start to attract smaller molecules. And the attracted smaller molecules we call it as what? The planet zamials. The attracted one we call it as what? Sorry. The attracted one we call it as the planet zamials. Now sir, will the planet zamials releases radiation? Will it release radiation, Andre? No. Does the earth releases radiation? Twinkling? No. Why? Because for the radiation or for the nuclear reaction to take place, we want what temperature? High temperature along with intense gravitational force. Can we see intense gravitational force here? No. Can we see or no? Hope you are getting. Now we want intense gravitational force, intense temperature, nuclear fusion and radiation. And that is the reason the planets does not release radiation, rather they are dependent on what? Rather, they are dependent on this, we call it as stars for sunlight or for radiation, and that we call it as what? That we call it as creation of, this we call it as creation of the stars, and this we call it as creation of what? The planets. Hope the creation of stars and creation of planets is clear. Yes or no? Yes. Tomorrow, once again, we will discuss about the nebular hypothesis and about galaxy, and we will continue with respect to the solar system. Yes or no? Yes. Now, is the today's class the completely fine? Artha aita? Yes, done. Okay, alva. See, Kannada I'll be using little. Now, whatever Kannada I'll be using, I'll be translating it into English. Not an issue. Okay, alva. This is majorly with respect to the UPSC, the prelims, as well as the mains batch, and I will be handling the complete geography part. Yes or no? Hope you guys are getting it. Now, is there any issue from your side? Sir, this should not be done. It beda anta. Now, anything is open. Now, if not, it is, we'll take some doubts before winding up this session. Both from our, it is online as well as from our offline. It is doubts or any queries. It is always open. First, online first. Begin. It's okay first. Okay, Artha Tigli. Yes, 100% clear? Yes or no? Now, is the speed clear? Language for you? Yeah, you can be open. Yes, at least you can manage. Okay. Yes, done. Okay, Alva. See, I want 100% of the effort. It is from your side also and from our side also. It will be 100%. Okay, Alva. Now, in case if you guys have any doubts, I hope you guys have my Telegram ID. My name, I hope it is, my name is clear. It is Harendra Gaudam. It is without space. You can contact me on Telegram ID for any of the queries. This will be my Telegram ID. You can, or you will get it from it is Google also. Okay, Alva. Any doubts you could have from any subject, you can contact me and you feel free to contact me. Yes, with this note, we will wind up the session here and we will continue the rest part tomorrow. Yes or no? Same time, it is the class 4 will be on tomorrow. Done. Thank you. Online, thank you. See you all tomorrow. Yes. Okay. Yes, online. Yes, clear. No issues. Okay, yes. Sheila, yes, no issues. Okay. Yes, will we continue the same thing tomorrow? Yes. Thank you all. Thank you. Yam, thank you. Sheila, thank you. Yes.